It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Monday, February 24th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that thinks the Flyers were back and definitely excited to be playing hockey together again.
We were excited.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade. I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. Keep up with our latest episodes and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on all your favorite socials. And of course, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, I was honestly a little worried that we would have this game against the Edmonton Oilers. And it just because of the level of hockey we've been watching for the last couple of weeks at Four Nations, it would just feel somehow less than or boring or something like that. But this game was anything but boring. We saw on Saturday against Edmonton, right?
Yeah, it wasn't a boring game, although Connor McDavid was not Connor McDavid. Like
That is
he faded
definitely
early in that
true.
game. Like he was out
Yeah.
there passing the puck. He didn't even want to shoot, but I give him credit for playing. I mean, that was the
Oh,
one
yeah.
thing. At least he played, so people, because look, it was a sellout, right? I can't tell you
Yeah.
when the last sellout was. The sellout was because of Connor McDavid. So he did show up, and that's much better than the NBA. So I'm going to just say it like that. But it
Mhm.
was an exciting game. Early on, there was zero defense being played for about a period
Oh,
and a half.
God.
None.
Yeah, and I posted about this about, partway through the first period or early second period, I think. But it definitely felt very similar to the first game that the Flyers played against the Oilers, which was like the third game of the season
Right.
because it felt like early NHL season hockey where everything is loose, it's wide open, the defense isn't there yet, right? Because people haven't figured out exactly their defensive structures and how things are going to work and adjusting to teams. It just had that early season feel to it.
It did. And Urson was bad for a period and a half too,
Yeah.
where Skinner was just rusty. Like he hadn't played.
Right.
So we saw that with Shesterkin in other games. Urson had played and he still looked bad for a little while. Then he kind of got it together. But so yeah, there was a lot of weird things going on with that. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, goals were being scored and more than anybody thought for sure. And yeah, in the end, I mean, they get a win. We could debate about that win another time. But because it's gonna it's gonna be
Right.
debatable if they go on a 5-game win streak and take themselves two spots, 3 spots out of the final draft position. Who knows? But it was a great game for Matt Michkov, and that was a big thing.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the guys returning from injury coming up a little bit later in the show along with our nemesis of the week, but focusing on guys like Michkov in this game who were fine, but kind of in a rut before the break and
Yeah,
absolutely needed this break to kind of do a reset. I would say Matt Michkov is number one on that list, right?
he was number one. I wrote about it on the Hockey News on the Canadian side because I mentioned Ivan Demidov, what they might expect from him when he comes over. And this is the most games Michkov's ever played ever. He played
Right,
50 in the MHL, so in the
right.
minors. That's it. So he definitely hit a wall. We knew he hit a wall. And the one thing about him, though, that is still something that, as a young player, he's going to have to battle. If he's in the flow early, he scores early, the offense is going early, then he has one of these kinds of games. If he doesn't get in the flow early or has that confidence up, and he talked about a post game, if the confidence isn't super high at the beginning, sometimes it fades during the game. And that's something where he's a young player. He's just going to have to battle that. And that's not, he's not alone in that. And especially when you come over from Russia and the style's different.
Right.
All these things are a factor.
Right. And I think, you want to talk about that line he was on
Hmm.
with Sean Couturier and Owen Tippett. They were on fire that
Hmm.
game a lot. It was a tremendous game, I think, for all three of them. I think that Sean Couturier in particular was another player that needed that
Oh,
downtime
big time.
because he's banged up. But I think he played extremely well in that game. And, they talked about it on the broadcast too, but it was very noticeable in terms of him being a stabilizing, good defensive presence when you
Right.
have two other guys who are fast. Well, I would say medium fast,
One guy's fast. Yeah.
right? But in terms of a dynamic playmaker and a fast scorer, right?
Hmm.
That combination seemed to work really well, and it worked to Sean Couturier's favor, and it got him on the board in his 200th goal of his career.
Yeah, it was a nice mark for him to reach. He had a great game. He's had like 3 of these games all year though, and the problem is because of the NHL schedule, and it's going to be really condensed down the stretch. And this is why I know you have been okay with this. Just needs to have games off, and if they don't give
Right.
him games off, you're never going to see that Sean Couturier enough. But he was there this game, and it was a big deal. Tippett had his best game of the year for sure,
Yep.
and his speed was apparent. He even shot at a different angle once, which I was happy for him. He missed the net on a backhand, which was wide open. So that's what you get with Tippett. But he had a great game, and we'll see if he can carry that through because he hasn't had a good year. Like that's the thing.
Right. Right. And, kind of going back to Michkov as,
Yes.
the key like linchpin on this
Hmm.
line, he has found great success against the Edmonton Oilers this
Yes.
year for some
He
reason.
just raises his game
But
against them. He
he
does.
does. So there was the goal and 2 assists in this game, and then the 3rd game of the season, he had 2 goals. That was an overtime loss, though. So it was like I remember it very distinctly. You wanted to celebrate that, but they lost the game. Well, this
Right.
time they won the game. So
Right.
it was a nice change in terms of that for sure. I
And
think.
one other key thing, for whatever reason, he was allowed to cheat in this game. And he did
Mhm,
cheat in this game once. So I
yeah,
don't know what the rules are with the coach, but one time he got yelled at for it. Now he didn't get yelled at for it. It was very noticeable when he was allowed to cheat.
yes, absolutely. Now, the new guys.
Hmm.
Jakob Pelletier, his first game with the Flyers because of all the visa drama. I think, he had very limited ice time in
Hmm.
this game for sure. And he was on the fourth line. Torts even mentioned, with a Ryan Poehling, who we'll talk about in the next segment, but coming back from injury, I think Pelletier was fine. I don't think he stood out tremendously either way
No.
for me. But again, I think with him having 3 weeks off from playing hockey, he was gonna be a little bit rusty, but, obviously, we're gonna give him a little bit more time before we're gonna truly evaluate him, but I just felt like he was there in this game.
Yeah. Um, Post game was kind of interesting though, because John was like, he's going to have to do some things here to stay in the lineup, and I got the impression he didn't do all of them, and so it made me look at Instat to see what was his usage on defense in Calgary, and he had a 0% defensive zone usage, and I almost never find 0%. It's hard to find at any level, so if they're going to try and transform him into this bottom 6 guy for a John Tortorella guy, then it's going to be a transformation because he's not known for this. He's more known for his offense.
Right, and it is interesting, we have our Fandoms Tuesday show tomorrow back, uh, from our little hiatus when we talked to Maddie Campbell last week, but all the guys that would replace him in the lineup were with the Phantoms. So it
Right.
wasn't even a possibility in this particular game. But obviously they were going to play him because he's new and they need to play him uh, pretty much going out, as we've said. But I do think that without sort of that quote unquote threat there for Jacob Peltier, at least for the immediate time being, like I think it's gonna be really important for him to show what he can do and his level of skill and kind of structure be damned, so to speak, right?
I mean, that's the thing. It's going to be a battle for him to get the ice time, like you said.
Mhm.
So I don't think he's going to be in that position. I mean, unless he has like, 2-point games playing on the fourth
Right.
line for 10 minutes or on the third line occasionally, it's going to be a little bit of a battle.
I know. I know. And that's what's going to be interesting to see, but certainly not going to make any judgments
No,
after
it's too
one
early.
game. Way, way too early for that. I think, other than that, the power play goal, I think, was important to see. And, like you and I were talking before we started recording, it wasn't like Kuzmenko had the greatest game and it was a lucky
No.
goal, but we did see some better puck movement on the power play with him out there, right?
Yeah, no question. It was it was a split. The first half of that power play was awful. The zone entries were bad, everything was bad, and then it started to
Right.
click a little bit, and then it was good, and they got that goal from 2 broken sticks, essentially, and
Right.
Kuzmenko laughed about it because he's never had anything like that happen. So, yeah, it was a little fortuitous. Before that, I had noticed that he had played 10 minutes, was a -1, and didn't have any shots on goal. So he's another one that, if things are going good early, he could ride high early. If not, you have to wonder if he's going to be just a power play specialist. And if that's the case, you kind of wonder, what his role will be in the future. But it's a little early for that. But these are the things because I know about him as a former player on other teams. So for this one, yeah, his attitude was good. Torts mostly liked what he saw. I think he didn't like the minus part. And yeah, we'll see what he does going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, we had some injured guys or banged up guys who returned in this game. The team was pretty healthy, which is a
Yep.
rarity for recent play. We're going to talk about them coming up next. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts, and each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to keep you feeling fuller longer. And personally, I love the no shells variety. It's a perfect grab and go snack for busy days. I have it at my desk while I'm working. And I had some friends over for a movie night recently. Instead of popcorn, we had bowls of a variety of their flavors, which everyone loved. But the Wonderful Pistachios chili roasted no shells and the sea salt and vinegar no shells were the biggest hits for sure. So delicious and healthy too. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein, providing all 9 essential amino acids. These little green wonders pack up a protein punch. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, on tomorrow's show, we will be previewing the home and home against the Pittsburgh Penguins that the Flyers have on tap. Plus, we'll have our Phantoms Tuesday. They actually won the last game of the week, Russ.
There you go.
So we've got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about there for sure. Plus, on the Wednesday show, we'll be answering your mailbag questions. So get those in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail. Send us a message on any of our socials or comment on our YouTube channel. Russ, you talked a little bit about Owen Tippett
Mhm.
already. He was somebody that we were very concerned about prior to the Four Nations break. And, he definitely, they were bringing him back a little bit gradually in this game. He only had 11 minutes, 16 seconds of ice time, but he absolutely maximized that, right?
Yeah, no question. I mean, for the time that he was out there, he was super noticeable. He maybe looked as fast as he was a year ago. He's only looked that fast a few times to me this year.
Right.
So, for whatever reason. And so, yeah, he had a little extra juice. So, certainly the rest was good. And he didn't have any real rust. And he got a couple goals. He was a +5 or something gaudy like that.
Yeah.
And you could see there was like instant chemistry with that line. And look, I mean, the Oilers are not known for defense. If Edmonton Oilers fans want to fight me on
No.
that, they have before. They're just
Although
not.
I will say Evan Bouchard did not look like Evan Bouchard in that game
No, no,
either.
he did. That's the point. That's usually the
Well,
arguable point. To me, he did because Evan Bouchard has these kinds of games.
interesting.
Yes, and that has been a bone of contention with some Edmonton Oiler fans and myself. So I do think he looked like Evan Bouchard. And so
All
anyhow,
right.
yeah. But look, Tippett saw that, did it, abused that defense, and did great. And Darnell Nurse talked about this game afterwards. We all know he's Donovan McNabb's nephew, and so he was always going to talk when he's in Philly. He said they just plain didn't execute, and that is true offensively. Defensively, they did almost nothing. Like, it was the Flyers just destroyed them almost in the second period, which never happens in the second period. We need to point that out too.
That's true. But like for Tippett specifically, I think obviously the shot that he had on that goal was tremendous. So not
Yeah,
only did he have the speed that we are used to from him, but the shot was there too. And I think
it was.
that was an important part of it, because we have talked about his shot a
Yeah,
lot on this show, and that sometimes it's just not there for him. And I felt like it was there for him in
it
this game.
was. It felt like he used a little different angle. Maybe he was able to practice his shot over this break, and maybe that is a help for him. And it
Yeah.
certainly seems that way.
Yeah, so he had 6 scoring chances, 3 of them were high danger, and that's,
Yeah.
like, evidence of that
Oh,
exact
yeah.
thing,
Yeah,
right?
we saw that for sure.
And I think, having Kuzmenko on the power play kinda instead of Tippett was a really good thing, because it
Yeah,
allowed Tippett to
because
focus on his particular game that he needed to 5 on 5.
that could be a key, because only because he wasn't producing on the power play, it may have become a source of frustration for him.
Mhm.
So temporarily, that could be a good thing. Eventually, he has to get back on the power play, but
Sure.
temporarily, it may be a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the second unit only had, like, 15 seconds or something like that of power
Right.
play time, so if he's on the second unit at some point, that's fine too.
That's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. So Ryan Poehling, who was the 4C in this game, we talked about him in connection with Jakob Pelletier, and, the fact that it may have led to Pelletier's kind of ramping up, not being in the most ideal of circumstances. And Torts,
Right.
mentioned that
He did say that.
specifically. But for Ryan Poehling himself, I think he's definitely like, he needs this and a couple more games to get back to kind of where he wants to be.
Yeah, because he's had an up and down season to begin with. And so, yeah, I do feel like, look, his speed is there, but the rest, is going to
Right.
take a little while. No question.
Yeah, and so obviously they limited that fourth line anyway, which they would have. I
Right.
think. I think in a normal circumstance they might have had this line play a little bit more against a team like Edmonton, just to try and grind
Hmm.
one of Edmonton's, maybe their second line down a little bit.
They didn't need
But
to in this
they
one.
didn't need to in this game.
Right.
Exactly, exactly. So I don't think we saw as much of Ryan Poehling as we would have
Yeah. In
under
Pittsburgh,
different
against
circumstances.
Pittsburgh, I think you'll see it a little more.
Right. Egor Zamula in this game. I think, we talked about the defense in this game overall being very loose and not there. But again, Zamula wasn't very noticeable to me in this
No.
game, but defense wasn't noticeable very much overall. So is that a
No,
part
I
of
mean,
it?
the Flyers defense
Possibly.
did get better, and then it started
Yeah.
to fade a little bit, like midway in the third period, and that's when Urson played
Hmm.
better. So I think there was that. I would say that. Here's what I am going to say, though. It'll be up to Danny Briere to trade Egor Zamula so Emil Andre could actually play every day. John
Right.
Tortorella is going to use Zamula as a crutch here, just because he doesn't have to do anything with Zamula. He's kind of like, you put him out there, he doesn't kill you,
Yeah,
but he
he's
doesn't
plug and
really help
play.
you.
Yeah.
And he needs to take that away from the coach for Andre's development. Andre needs to be with the team.
Yeah, and it was interesting because, the question to me was out there, why not get Andre back and play him? And, the answer is exactly what you're just saying. Well, you need to know if Zamula is good to go health
Hmm.
wise,
Hmm.
right? You need to know what his level of play is,
Hmm.
so that if you're going to trade him,
Hmm.
you can figure out what the best deal is. And I think that kind of applies to Ristolainen too, right? Because
Yes.
which is why you wouldn't put Andre in a game like this one in particular. But also the Phantoms are on the road in like Michigan and Illinois, so the travel just would not have worked out. But
We'll see
I
about it
do.
on Tuesday. That's when we'll know.
Right. That's the big difference, right? Is if today or tomorrow they make some changes
Right.
for this home and home against Pittsburgh. But at least for this game in particular, I think putting Zamula in was fine, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, you do need to know. The odd thing was there wasn't that many scouts at this game. And so,
Really?
yeah, there was only 5. Well,
Huh.
6, but 5 teams. And so what that told me was they did so much scouting pre tournament, pre Four Nations, that they may only send guys to really look at certain players next week. They may not do much with
Right.
this week because they've done so much previously. Then they watch players in the tournament. And so I do feel like it's kind of changed. And there were trades made. So some of those teams are like, they don't need to come and scout because
Right.
they made trades. I think all of that played into it. But yeah, it was an underscouted game, I felt.
Very, very interesting. Now, that kind of affects the Ristolainen conversation, and I think that obviously, I think he's the biggest trade chip that the Flyers have right
Well, I'll give
now
you the one
as
team that stood
sellers.
out for me, yes, for that. So we saw Shea Theodore go down in the Four Nations,
Correct.
and Vegas was at this game.
Okay.
So, and now with Theodore probably hitting LTIR because that's what Vegas does, um,
Mhm.
they would be able to take the contract of Ristolainen.
Yep,
So
they
to
would,
me, that
because
was
they
the
can
only
figure
one.
out any math,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, it's easy. So to me, if there was a team there with a purpose, they may have been the team.
Right. Right. That is very interesting. I do think that he looked pretty solid
Oh, he
out
had a good
there.
game.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that if anybody was worried about his injury status, I think this game was a good showcase
It
for
was a good
him.
showcase game for him, for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, we will see kind of what happens with him in particular. I think Zamula is kind of third on the Flyers trade list with Scott Lawton in the middle
Yeah.
there, but I do think that it is, I would say, more likely than not right now that Ristolainen gets traded, but
It just
I don't
depends on
know.
the cap space for a team, but now someone like Vegas, who clearly could not have done it before the Theodore injury, can do it now.
Right. Well, to be continued, Russ. In the meantime, it is Monday, so we will have our nemesis of the week and talk a little Flyers Carnival coming up next.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on that than with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip off or want to bet on the fourth quarter comeback, you could stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you could even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app's easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
The Philadelphia Flyers annual carnival was yesterday. Hope everybody had a really good time. I love that they do this. It's really fun. It's something that, you don't see the Wells Fargo Center set up like this very
Right.
often, with all the rides, and then, there's the autographs and the photo sessions and all
Hmm.
of that, all for a good cause for Flyers charities. And so I just think it's a really cool thing and the fact they've kept it up all this time is really, really fun.
Yeah, it is. It's great that it continues. I feel like I wish the wives had a little bit more of a spotlight on them, which they used to, but
Right.
they don't, and I don't know why. We used to also be able to interview them in the press box like a couple games before or the game before and
Mhm.
kind of put out the word, and that didn't happen. So I don't know why, but still, it's a great event.
Yeah, and, of course, they have an auction with lots of different great items that, the online auction is open until Wednesday at 8 p.m. You
That's
can find
cool.
the link to all that through Flyers Charities, on your internet. So if there's any items you wanna bid on, please do so to help them out. I think, they did, like, a whole bunch of favorite things baskets, which was really cool. They promoted Michkov's, during the game broadcast on Saturday, just just a few little items and autograph things, things that this player likes. And they have that for a whole bunch of different players out there. So it's
I would say
a lot of
this.
good stuff.
It is a lot of good stuff. And if I went and covered, I would put up at least $20 to dunk Haley Simon in the dunk tank. Because I have a good
Yes, the
aim.
dunk tank is the good part of it too.
I have good aim, and she's a good sport about it. And I'm pretty sure I could put her in the dunk tank. But I didn't get that chance. But other people did, and that's fun too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so moving to our nemesis of the week. Last week, Russ, I talked about figuring out how to eat on the road in Boston when I was there for Four Nations, and
And did it
I
work
did.
out?
It did work out really well
Okay.
because, well, first off, there were press box meals, which helped.
Right.
And there was a couple of healthy options there. And I had mentioned that food court in the hub, which
Right.
is attached to the train station and TD Garden. So many good options, really good.
It's a nice
Um,
station. It is.
yeah, yeah, like, the food options there were really good, and I managed to spend an entire week in the city of Boston and not go to Dunkin' Donuts once.
That's I don't know, like you almost have to try not to. That's weird.
I know, it was very weird, I did that. You talked about, there was, like, some ad on the dasher boards for dude wipes, which
Yeah.
was a very uncomfortable conversation, I
And
gotta
I wasn't
say.
the only one that noticed, and
But
actually by the end of the tournament, the phrasing that they used, their catch line was even worse than the one I read.
yeah, yeah.
That's all I'm gonna tell you.
Oh, no.
It
Oh,
was
god.
worse.
I do not even wanna know. But, at any rate, moving to this week, obviously for me, it's going to be the flightless birds in Pittsburgh, the Penguins, because we do have this home and home against them this week. And I know for both teams this season, obviously both teams are near the bottom of the division and are not likely to make the playoffs, but the rivalry is still there.
Oh,
And I
absolutely.
and I think, you do have, we just saw the Flyers play Connor McDavid, where the two Travi played against their
Mhm.
Canada teammates, and Sidney Crosby was on that team as well. So there's like, there's some extra elements of that drama added to it. And my personal drama, of course, added to it is that my brother lives in Pittsburgh and my nephew lives there, and he's a
Yeah,
Pens fan, which
yeah.
is terrible for me personally. So this week is about like the family group chat going off about
Oh,
all
I
of
get it.
about the 2 games for sure.
I mean, look, puffins are better than penguins anyhow. Let's just
They
face it.
are 100%. I've seen
Not even
both up
close.
close.
Yeah, it's not
Not
even
even
close.
close.
But here's my thing. The Four Nations was a big success, right?
Yeah,
And a lot of people questioned it beforehand, which is fair because they didn't know. I knew the players would play hard, but they didn't know, like, would it capture the imagination of just hockey fans? Well, I got
right.
news for you. It captured a lot more than just hockey fans. Now, the old way that people like to post online is, yeah, that's great. This is like the Olympics and nobody's going to watch hockey afterward. I'm going to disagree on this because I
Mhm.
saw enough posts where people were like, never watched hockey in their lives, watch this, and watched multiple games, like 3 or 4 games. And now they're like, you know what? I'm going to watch hockey because I didn't realize it was this. And so, why do I think that they're going to do that? I think they probably got people that were interested in the NBA who weren't interested in watching their sham of an all-star game and got them watching hockey because, they were fighting, they were playing their hearts out, it was physical, it was fast, and they were like, I didn't know this was hockey. And so I do feel like the nemesis is those people that like to just say, you're not getting any new people out of this. And I'm going to tell you, I believe they are.
Yeah, I think so too. I really think this was a tremendous tournament, and I
Yeah, I
think
mean,
it
the
really.
ratings showed it.
Yeah, and I think that again with the Olympics next year, this is a whole year that you can educate people about this game to
Yes.
ramp up for that tournament, and people have that to look forward to,
Yeah.
right? So if you get some of the best players in the world who obviously play in the NHL, like, you can showcase them if they get it right. That's the thing that worries me is will they be able to capitalize on this the way that we hope they will. But I think the playoffs this year are going to be a prime opportunity for that. And I think if the NHL can get it right and showcase some of the players that were those highlights of Four Nations in the playoffs properly, I think it could be really, really good for this game. And like being there, it was hard to feel what it felt like kind of from outside that.
Right.
But from what I gather, yeah, like it was a big deal.
No, it was. It was a big deal to non-hockey fans. That's the point of it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So hopefully again, the race to the playoffs is really good. The Eastern Conference playoff race is a good showcase, whether the Flyers are involved in it or not. And I think it's good for the game. And as they say, a rising tide lifts all boats,
It
right?
does. It does.
All right, that will do it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. We will be back tomorrow to talk Flyers versus Penguins, as well as the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So let us know your mailbag questions. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com. You can message us on any of our socials at Locked On Flyers or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology on the same socials, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey, become a fantasy hockey expert, get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.